before we took a break, I said we're going to look a little bit of micro. So what I'm going to be doing is, just keep this in mind. I'm going to be referring to this diagram quite a lot. Okay? So just a recap, we said this is how we are connected as an economy to everyone. Okay? So if any of the participants messes up, then everyone is in problems, right? If we look at the banks, okay. So I was saying, if everyone messes up here, just one participant, then the whole system gets into trouble. What am I talking about? 2008, 2009, the recession. Right? What was the problem? It started here. The recession. Okay? The economic recession. It started here. What happened here? Unsecured lending. That, you know, in the US. Okay? The housing problems, you know, the housing debt. Okay. So that part got into problems, and the whole economy now was into recession. The US economy was in recession, and as they say, if the US sneezes, everybody gets a cough. Eh? So from there to the whole world. You know. But what I'm just trying to show you is that because of this, of these arrows, so if just one party, you know, doesn't play along, he's messing around with the whole economy. So if people strike, these withhold their labor, still same problems. Right? If these guys do not produce these goods, everyone is in trouble. So, what happened to Greece?
Yes.
What is the problem in Greece? Does anyone have an idea?
I think it was it also has to do with the banks, I think.
Okay. These guys were spending more than what they had. You know.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens to you if you are earning 500 rand and every month you spend 700 rand? What is happening then?
There's a deficit. Deficit of 200. And that 200
In a year,
is old.
okay. In a year,
2004.
that's 2,400 plus interest. You know. In 20 years, it's how much? You? Okay.
20,450. 60. No, I'm not.
It's also in Greece. It's also quite interesting because I think the UK had was the UK. Is it the UK banks? I think they were heavily invested in in Greece,
Yeah.
Cyprus also, which somehow was also affected in that whole thing. So I'm thinking that where that block that's outside the foreign sector, that what happens internally also can affect the foreign sector.
Yeah.
In that connection.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Now, when we look at here, okay, which these are firms, we look at how then people draw in resources to make sure that output is produced efficiently and maximum. This is management. Okay. So management is linked to the whole economics picture. Finance is linked in the sense, when we study finance, what are we studying about finance? We are basically studying about how our consumers or our households, they finance their expenditure. They finance their expenditure. What do we mean? How do you finance your expenditure? Salaries,
Loans.
investments, So that is finance. Okay. Now, I had said before the break that we were going to talk about microeconomics, right? Microeconomics is not about firms, but it's about analyzing individual components of this system. When you break it up and then start to analyze it and see what makes it behave in a certain way. And I had said for that we would use the handout on, which is article number 5. Okay? Article number 5. Okay. Article number 5. Can somebody please just read it? Take us through. It's very short.
Toronto, Blackberry is preparing to make deep cut to its workforce by end of the year that could lead to slashing the company's headcount by up to 40%. The Wall Street Journal said on Wednesday, citing people familiar with the matter. The layoffs will be across the board and likely to occur in waves, the newspaper reported. Blackberry, which once dominated the corporate smartphone arena, last month said it was considered an outright sale of the company as it reviews its options. It has struggled in recent years to stanch rapid market share losses to rivals like Apple and Samsung Electronics. Blackberry, which has already laid off hundreds of employees this year and previously warned that further job cuts were in the offing, declined to comment on report or the magnitude of the reported layoffs. It employed 12,700 people as of March. We will not comment on rumors and speculation. Blackberry spokesperson Adam Emery said, "We are in the second phase of our transformation plan. Organizational moves will continue to occur to ensure we have the right people in the right roles to drive new opportunities." The report comes to the same day the Canadian company introduced the Z30, a top-of-the-line smartphone intended to help the former industry pioneer wrestle its way back into the intensely competitive smartphone market. But investors have grown increasingly nervous about BlackBerry's future as its market position crumbles. The company has been facing persistently lackluster sales of devices that run on the BlackBerry 10 operating system. Shares in the company slid 1.5% in Toronto to 10.72 Canadian dollar and fell almost 1% to 10.45 on the Nasdaq.
Tell me, what comes to your mind from this article? What has gone wrong in BlackBerry?
I would imagine they never kept up with the market, and now that it's companies like Samsung and Apple are entering the smartphone industry, that they actually way ahead of BlackBerry, which has
Very good point.
Caused them actually now to start losing business. It's actually a number of things. I believe also when they had the BB, the actual BB, they did not want to release the information like SMSs and all that is to be released to the government so they can have access in case for bombings, etc. And the UK actually banned the application. So they lost massive sales there because that was a big hit for South Africans. But they didn't want to release that information or their service to the governments of those countries. So there they also started. They started losing business. Whereas iPhone came out with the WhatsApp application so that people can communicate faster.
Okay. Somebody else? What comes to your mind? Do you have anything? Pierre? No. Look at it from.
The escape from like what we said earlier before the break that if you would remember Blackberry about is it a year ago, 2 years ago, the system crashed, and for a few days people couldn't. It's not something that's in the article itself, but I think that's over and above what Brendan said. It's one of the things that contributed to them losing even more market share when the system crashed because they had failed to invest in development.
Okay. So.
And instead of their curve, going up again, it began to go all the way to where they are now.
BlackBerry was the pioneer of the smartphone to the community, and what they failed to do was continue pioneering to keep up with Samsung and iPhone, and they just plainly ignored the fact that these were two upcoming products, and theirs was superior, and didn't think any wiser. They thought the product was superior because of offering, which it probably is still. You only pay so much for internet usage, to be honest. So with Samsung and iPhone, we're actually as consumers a bit silly. BlackBerry's internet is $65 no matter what you do.
And with the iPhone?
400 Rand a month.
But still, people are going for the iPhone.
It's design. It's, what do you call it? The word I'm looking for, fashion.
So it's fashion.
It is. It's a fashion statement.
And the?
Apps.
Okay.
They're better on the iPhone and Samsung.
Okay. Okay. So why would you buy a Samsung than a BlackBerry?
It's the operating systems.
Which is what you used. Okay.
But the communities also had a huge drive towards it, the actual consumer. The consumers themselves have decided to declare BlackBerry a dinosaur. So, for example, Brandon's got a Samsung and I still have a BlackBerry. First thing he's going to say to me, oh, please get with the times. That something happens, then your mind or social mind says, oh wait, hold on, if I've still got a BlackBerry, I'm outdated.
No, for a fact that iPhone has a whole firewall system, where BlackBerry and the others, they don't. So you can browse the internet, but then you have a virus and your phone crashes in a day or two. Whereas with the iPhone, you don't. You don't get viruses because it has a whole firewall system because you have to go through the cloud in Europe or wherever, and that prevents any viruses on your phone. So it's definitely you're gonna last longer with iPhone than with BlackBerry or Samsung.
Okay. Interesting.
It's good. Do you have the new iOS 7? Haven't you? Yes, it's awesome. Have you got an iPhone? The operating system's out. iOS 7. It's on my phone. Works sharp.
Let me pose the same question in a different way and say, in your companies, okay, in your companies, what is it that you're doing or that you have done that has made you not become another BlackBerry story?
Innovation. New product designs.
New product design. I think my view, I think BlackBerry is gone here.
It might do what Apple did
But-
many years ago, eh?
Sorry?
Apple did the same thing many years ago. They failed to stay in touch with the times. They failed until Steve Jobs decided, hey buddies, what's going on here? And they created the iPhone and the iPad.
It will depend
The
on the
Apple
turnaround
Mac.
strategy.
Strategy.
And I mean, I read on an article on LinkedIn 2 days back, and there's an investor who is actually contemplating buying BlackBerry, you know. And I'm saying this based on that. And he was saying that you can look at it from two perspectives. You know, it can either go down, but if you get a good turnaround, you know, management team or if you get some in the same light that Rory is talking about, if you've got someone who's a genius, you know, in that industry, a Steve Jobs, you know, then you can turn it around.
Okay.
Michael Jordan.
That's a difficult one. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
They have a chance.
It's possible. Is it possible?
Or it's going to go dormant
Mhm.
and reinvent itself.
That's possible.
Yeah.
Or they could just be bought.
And they're going to give they're going to bring the same product that they initially brought out.
All they need to do is they've had such a long reign, and I like that. They've had such a long reign at the top. They've made billions of dollars. Close the business or put it in dormant, and in 5 or 10 years from now, launch a similar product or an upgraded version of a 64 or 124 megabyte phone, and it will live for another 10 years.
And you know the share price is well, they recently reported 1 billion in loss. 1 billion in losses, so it doesn't look good for them.
Close the doors, liquidate. Someone buys the rights to the brand, saves it for a few years, and then relaunches.
Samsung.
But look at Samsung. Which operating system is it using?
Android.
From
Is it?
Android from?
Isn't from
Google.
Apple?
Google.
Yes. So the search engine there has developed an operating system for phones. You see. So now, and what about the iPhone? What does it use?
Apple's own operating system.
Their own operating system.
iOS.
So the operating
Just
system there
internet
is not an issue there in terms of between iPhone and Blackberry, because they both have their own operating systems.
You see, the diversity of products for me in Apple, the diversity of products in Samsung.
Yeah.
There's no diversity of products in Blackberry. It's either a phone or a tablet. Whereas if you have an iPhone, you can have an iPad, an Apple Mac Pro, and they can all be interconnected through a cloud where you can see everything's the same.
Yeah.
Samsung has got many products, washing
Yes.
machines, to industrial machinery, to phones, to TVs, it's unreal. And that's what makes them a player. Because people often, or my opinion is, if I have a Samsung TV in my lounge, I want to have the same Samsung phone, I want to have the same Samsung washing machine. I don't want to have
Yeah.
mix.
Yeah.
Products.
So if one company can offer me all the products I need for my home, I'm going to use all that company's products because it makes sense to have all the same products in my home. I think they've won by diversifying.
Yeah. Which BlackBerry definitely failed to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is microeconomics. So what's your understanding of microeconomics from what we have discussed about BlackBerry?
They were closed-minded, so they only focused on themselves.
Also, I would imagine how an organization of that magnitude can have an impact on the entire globe. You know, I'm sure the Blackberries and the factories in every country is probably also going to be affected and will close down, or either that will minimize their staff and only produce certain amounts of units per year. So, look, I still think they'll definitely still be running for a couple of years because, you know, not the entire population can afford the iPhone and the Samsung. So, I mean, they'll still be in business. But, like I said, it's like in the article, they've lost, what, 12,700 employees. And I'm sure that's going to have a toppling effect in just about all the other countries that they've situated in.
Bearing in mind, Apple and Samsung have both accommodated the lower income groups right now.
Mm.
They've launched the
Mini.
iPhone C, and Samsung has got the mini versions and a couple of other versions.
So what can you say about competition in this industry?
It's huge.
Yes.
Tough.
Yes, tough.
It's tough.
It's doggy.
Competitive.
Very.
So would you say that in the macro, what was your question? Macroeconomy, yeah?
Right. We've talked about demand. This is micro.
Yes.
Behavior of individual firms. Demand. Now we've said competition. The type of structure of the market. Is it a competitive structure? Is it a monopoly? You know, is it an is it oligopoly?
What is that?
That's a different kind of structure. You'll normally find within oil-producing countries. What they do is they come together and form a cartel, right? So if they want to increase the price of oil, they just
Turn the taps off.
turn the taps off. Okay, and when they want, they turn the taps more and more oil flows. Right. So they benefit more in that kind of market structure. They benefit more by cooperating, amongst themselves. Because if Saudi Arabia turns more and more oil flows, the price will go down, and all of them will be affected. So they always stay together. That's that particular type of market structure. There are quite a lot, but okay. So we have said competitiveness, prices, which is what you talked about affordability, that they have launched the mini to try and accommodate the low income groups. Okay. All right. Now, the whole basic of studying economics. Economics tries to answer three questions, which is, what do we produce? How? For who? What? How? And for whom? So what are firms doing? Firms are answering those questions in the best possible way, most efficient way, and then the reward becomes profit. Right. So this is what we have talked about, micro and macro, that it's
Sorry, can I ask, what is right? Is it what the capita spending? Or
GDP per capita. Okay. Anyone who has an answer there?
What's the question?
He wants to know what is, the word per capita.
Who? Capital.
Per capita.
Per capita.
Per capita. Normally you find it associated with GDP. Can look at it as GDP per head. So what you do is you take the GDP of the country, divide by your population. Okay. So what it is giving you is
Contribution to GDP per person.
is some economic development measure, right? So you find developed countries tend to have higher GDP per capita. So you then say, okay, so the higher, it gives a measure of the standard of living of a country. Rich countries tend to have higher standards of living. And I think the country with the highest GDP per capita is Norway. Yeah.
Norway.
It's Norway, not the US.
Yeah, I think it's Norway.
Why?
Because I was looking at I don't know, when I was Googling, and there was Norway, I think Sweden, The Scandinavian countries,
Yes,
I
yes.
think they were in the top. Denmark.
Yeah.
It's too cold to stand outside, so they have to wait. Why?
That is true.
What is there in Norway? They've got oil, they've got,
Is it, do they have?
yeah, they've got resources, those guys. They've got resources, they've got a small population.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah,
Yeah,
very small. Think
yeah,
about
very small. Very small.
4 million, 5 million.
Yeah. Now, when we, as a country, we are looking at I just point out to this. What it's normally used is if you are analyzing something, let's say, as you can see here, everything is connected to each other. So one particular variable would influence several other factors. So if you are interested in analyzing, let's say, the relationship between two factors, then you hold other factors outside constant. Okay. So you'll then say demand, for example, to say demand of a product is influenced by price. Then you have held other things constant. What do I mean? You have excluded the other factors because you want to concentrate on the relationship between demand and price. Your demand for Blackberry and the price of Blackberry. What happens if the price is high? What happens if the price is low? But that's not the only factor that affects demand for the Blackberry. You've got consumer tastes, you've got technology, preferences, incomes. What else? Quite a lot, huh? Yes. Okay. So that then allows you to hold the other factors constant, and then you analyze the relationship between the variables that you want to look at. Okay. So that's the method to economics. We will upload these slides on the e-learning zone, so you all have access to them. Okay. This is what we talked about earlier on, that economics answers those three questions. What should we produce? You know, remember, we had 600,000. Say, okay, should we use it on classes or should we use it in education? What do we do with it? You know, how? For who? Oh, have I gone back? Okay. Right. The PPF is a simple, not a simple, but it's a, yes. The PPF, what we are doing is, like I said before, is we hold other things constant, and then we look at in a country to say, if we have got two products, A and B, you know, in a number line, right? That part would be 0, the number line. Then 1, 2, 3 going that way, another going that side. So if you use all your resources, so you're looking at all the resources in a country, and then you assume you can produce two goods with them. If you produce all in B, then you won't produce A. If you produce all of A, then you won't have B, right? But in a country, because these resources are scarce, you've got all these participants here. You need to, you know, cover services for everyone. Then you try and produce both goods, you know. You could have on the other side, what shall we have? Maize, bread. You wouldn't want to produce all of bread. You wouldn't want to produce all in terms of maize meal. So you'd want to produce combinations of either A or B. So if that is that and that is that, so combinations that are here, if you use all your resources, you can produce at that point. If you use them here, you produce at that point. But you can produce combinations whereby you've got that of B and that of A, or somewhere there. And then when you draw these together, you then get a PPF. What it is showing you is combinations of output that you can produce using all your resources as a country, right? So basically, you look at it in terms of GDP, for example, because GDP is the value of output in the country, okay? So with all the resources that we have, we can only produce, let's say, 100 billion. For us to produce more than 100 billion, let me take you back to FM and say, if you are making bread and with what? With 5 kg of flour, you make 100 loaves. Okay. How then can you make 150 loaves? What should you do if you want to make 150? If you want to produce more than 100 loaves?
There's a lot of factors.
Mm-hmm.
There's the machinery capabilities, there's the employment capabilities, there's the raw material sourcing capabilities, tell you how much raw materials you need, can you afford to purchase the raw materials?
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of things.
Okay. There's a couple of things, but what would happen if you have to produce more?
You need to buy more.
You have to.
You've got two options.
Or make more.
You can either reduce the size of the
Bread
loaf.
and loaf.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Okay.
Or if you're not allowed to buy more flour, or are you?
You are.
Or buy, or you can buy.
This is, sorry, we only have 5 kg of flour in South Africa, and we only produce 100 loaves. It's not enough for everyone. You want to produce more. What do you do?
You reduce quantity or quality.
Import the balance or trade.
Import the balance, huh? Okay. So the idea is, so when you import the balance, you are increasing the supply of resources, right? So with the supply of resources, you are now able to produce more. Okay? What's the other thing that you can do? Efficiency, in terms of efficiency. Does that improve output?
Does
Okay.
Can, right? So with the same input, you can get higher output through efficiency, through skills training, okay? Which is the same. So points outside the PPF, like there, if this is what we are producing, which is 5, points outside will show us unattainable areas. We cannot afford this. It's out of the range. We can only produce towards the side if we've got more resources. Points inside, well, it means we are inefficient. We are producing less because we are saying this is the maximum that we can produce. But if we produce somewhere inside, then okay.
Isn't this the graph where if I understand it correctly, say I can produce 100 loaves of bread, but I can produce 150 bags of meal. It's where I draw the relationship of trading the 50 excess bags with, in the old barter system really, with something that I require to feed the rest of my community.
More like when you have a limited resource factor and you are using that same resource to produce 2 goods. Okay. The idea here is basically to illustrate the concept of opportunity cost, that when you produce more of the other, you are basically losing the other. The whole idea of opportunity cost, that if you produce there, which is more of A, you are basically producing less of B. So you are basically trading one for the other. Okay. Now I want to take you back to those 3 questions that we had, which said, what do we produce? How? And for who? Okay. How do we produce? So when we had our diagram, this one, oh, I didn't give you the name. This is called the circular flow of income and goods. This diagram. This is the circular flow of income and goods. This is your pre-work.
Pre-work.
Yeah. The circular flow of income and goods. If you look in your pre-work, says with the aid of the circular flow model, discuss the interaction between your organization and the participants of the economy. Now we are going back to those 3 questions. What to produce, how to produce, and for whom. Now how to produce, you are pulling these resources together. So you have a system that enables you to command these resources and turn them into output. So you have systems within an economy that facilitate all this. And basically there are 3 types of systems. We have the command, we have the free market, and we have the mixed command. Is South Africa a free market system?
Yes. Some free market.
There are some free markets.
I do have some free markets.
Okay. There are some free markets. Okay.
It's mixed.
It says it's mixed.
It is a free market system.
Free market system, somebody? Think it's okay. So what is this free market system?
Consumers' rights to make profits, choose products they want to purchase.
Okay.
Price is dictated by the market.
Price detected by
Supply
the
and
market.
demand.
Supply and demand. Okay. It's free because there is no government interference. Government doesn't detect, that government doesn't answer those 3 questions of what to produce, how, and why. But government still, sorry, I'm not talking of mixed. We are talking about free. Free, there is no government interference there. You leave the market. The market will answer those 3 questions. And the market's mechanism for answering those questions is demand and supply. Okay? So the market will answer those questions using demand and supply. The command economy?
Command, it's like communism, where it's
Communism.
where the government is in control of everything.
Government is in control of everything. Are they still there? Are there still such markets?
Yes. China.
China?
China,
But China now is opening up.
Venezuela.
Venezuela,
Isn't Venezuela a communist? I think Venezuela.
Cuba, they still, I don't know.
Slowly transforming to. I think it's
I don't know.
Hmm? You don't know. Yeah, to some extent, North Korea.
oh yes, North Korea.
North Korea. Then mixed.
Mixed, it's where you have the where you have elements of both free and command. Like in South Africa, for an example, even though our economy is mostly a free market system, but the government still controls like electricity, ESCOM generation.
Okay.
And now they've just started their own mining company recently, that's going to be owned by the government. They are talking of transforming South African Post Bank, the bank, in the long term, possibly to even the same standards with the banks that we have. So it's a little bit mixed.
Yeah. It is.
But currently it's free. Potentially in the future it might not be.
Well, let me say, in reality, there is no totally free market. There is no totally command economy. But what differs then is the extent of openness. Right? What differs is the extent of openness. So most economies you find are mixed, but with a relatively high degree of freeness, So government will be there to intervene if sees that the direction of the economy is, needs intervention. And government would also be involved in the economy as an entrepreneur also. As you are pointing out, as ESCOM, state-owned enterprises. So you've got a mixed economy whereby those three questions are answered by both private enterprises and state-owned enterprises. So government intervenes in the economy. And do you think that is a good idea? Shouldn't government sell off ESCOM and everything and just stick to probably just managing and seeing that everything is moving smoothly? Should government sell ESCOM? Privatize? Government not be involved in production? Because government currently...
There's an upside and a downside.
Yeah,
Whichever way you look at
there's
it.
an upside and a downside.
Yeah.
Government actually owns quite a lot of, a few companies,
Yeah.
I think in the UK with their power, it's regulated in terms of the government still looks after all the piping and the actual supplying houses, but the billing systems are what's the name, belong to, I think there's about 5 different billing systems, companies that you can go to, and you'll get different rates for your electricity and gas, and that's competitive. But the actual infrastructure behind that, in terms of the meters and the gas itself and the supply and where it's coming from, is still government owned.
Pay for the service through somebody else.
That's interesting. Will it work in South Africa?
I think it will. Before it was, if I look at the UK, it was British Gas, which is exactly like, it was like ESCOM, and over the years there's been different companies that have come in and literally changed it, given better services, better rates, a very competitive market.
For me, that just means government should concentrate on governing the country. And yes, they can own entities to a certain point, no problem with that. But focus on the country itself, the infrastructure of the country, the services to municipalities or municipalities to people. So I don't have a problem with them owning it. I think it's great to own, same as the UK maybe, own ESCOM, but let other companies run the tariffs and make sure things are working on the ground.
Look at the Botswana government in terms of diamond mines. It's got quite a huge interest there in the diamond mines. So it's very much heavily involved. But if you look on a different picture, So government, as Botswana, is making quite a lot of money from those investments. But what is happening to the people on the ground? Is that money filtering to...
No.
No.
They're ranked
But
among
the
the top
government
10
is educating
most unhappy economies in Africa.
in Botswana.
And it's very rich, you know, because of that investment.
Social, so the people are the most unhappy people on the African continent. Kenya, Botswana, yeah, I think even the DRC ranks above that. But it was quite a, it's just something I heard somewhere, I can't remember. But they were ranked close to the top.
But it's
There's
also
unhappy people. And that just relates back to how much the government owns.
Yeah.
And
But it's
doesn't
also-
give back to the people.
The biggest investment in Botswana from the wealth of the country was in the education of its people.
yeah.
I think more than, possibly to a certain extent, more than infrastructure development. Because I think at some stage, let me try and recall it properly. The University of Botswana, for an example, if you got admitted, you're guaranteed financial aid, at university, and they send a lot of, because they don't have, they've got few institutions, they send a lot of their students, outside, both, in other African countries and abroad also. But similar challenges that we have in South Africa with politicians.
Yeah, so in terms of an economic system, there is no one way you can say it's the best. Yeah? You try and get the best from what you think would work for you. Now, we're discussing on ESCOM, and I just thought ESCOM has got a very interesting case, I think it's article number 3. I want to take you to article 3.
Number 3.
Johannesburg. There's been a delay in putting emission control equipment at Blackberry Power Station, ESCOM said on Wednesday. The delay in the retrofitting is aligned with the delay in the commissioning of the generating units at Medupi, it said in a statement. The parastatal said it had asked for a postponement on the compliance timeframes relating to the sulfur dioxide emissions. Medupi was meant to be fitted with flue gas desulfurization, FGD, which is a set of technologies used to remove sulfur dioxide in power plants. The method is part of stringent environmental regulations which have been enacted in many countries. ESCOM has previously communicated that Medupi is being constructed to be FGD ready, which means emission control equipment can be fitted after the station is completed. Should we go on? Air quality emission standards. In a statement on Monday, EarthLife said that in 2010 the World Bank lent ESCOM $3.7 billion to build Medupi. Among the conditions of the loan agreement was that Medupi install FGD and meet South Africa's air quality emission standards and legislation. However, over the past 3 months, ESCOM has been seeking to exempt itself and is delaying FGD at Medupi for several years, said EarthLife coordinator Tristan Taylor. The overall effect is that Medupi will not be bound to limits in terms of the amounts of particular matter, sulfur dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, mercury, arsenic, chromium, nickel, other heavy metals that can be emitted. Groundwork environmental campaigner Rico said that the poly plants Medupi could generate would affect people's health. Asthma and pulmonary disease. Particular matter emitted during coal combustion generates small particles which travel deep into the airways. This leads to asthma, decrements in lung function, and chronic obstruction pulmonary disease. He said that sulfur dioxide emitted by coal burning power plants led to the inflammation and hyper-responsiveness of the airways. Aggravated bronchitis and decreased lung function. However, ESCOM said it was satisfied its application for the postponement did not contradict its commitments to sustaining operations in an environmental and responsible way. Sure. ESCOM said that FGD technology requires great water resources, and this was a problem. FGD is water intensive. It will triple the water use of Medupi, and it cannot be installed on all 6 units until additional water is available, it said. Once the FGD has been commissioned, Medupi will comply with the new plant emission standard for sulfur dioxide. ESCOM said it had a problem balancing the country's energy and water needs with environmental compliance. Full compliance with the national emission standards at all ESCOM power stations will compromise South Africa's energy and water security. At the same time, such compliance would place major demands on South African water resources and produce higher waste volumes, with a small incremental benefit to the environment. ESCOM alleged that the air quality research over many years has shown that the primary cause of poor air quality was at ground level and not power stations. ESCOM has adopted a phased and prioritized approach to compliance with the emission standards, it said. Highest emitting stations will first have to be retrofitted with emission reduction technology.
That's ESCOM. Now, this article is what I find interesting on this article that I want to draw your focus on is the problem that ESCOM has on that second page, where it's talking about balancing the country's energy and water needs with environmental compliance. So you've got 3 things, right? The country's energy, the country needs electricity, but when building this power station, because you have borrowed this money from the World Bank has said, okay, you want the money, these are my conditions, you go green here. But in going green, it's going to triple the amount of water that is going to be used. And water is also a limited resource. Okay. Now, so it's energy, it's water, it's environmental compliance. 3 things. What should ESCOM do? So what we have here is a problem of choice. It's a problem of scarcity. It's opportunity cost. It is an issue of a state-owned enterprise satisfying the country's needs. What should be done? What should it do? And ESCOM doesn't have the money. That's why it borrowed from the World Bank. About 40 billion rands. And I'm sure we are all aware of power shortages in South Africa. I mean, normally when you build a power supply, you build it according to a specific population. Now, what has happened over the years? The population has grown, but what has happened to the power supply?
Remain the same.